Hello, today is Wednesday, April 24th, 2019. This is the kubeadm office hours, a subproject of Cluster Lifecycle. I'm going to share my screen and we can walk through the agenda. All right, hopefully folks can see my screen. All right, let's walk through the agenda, and at the end, if we still have time, we'll walk through any new issues or backlog items for triage. Fabrizio, you want to kick us off?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So, first news, we have the first kubeadm upgrade test up and running. And can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So there are still something to do, and we plan, me and Lubomir, we plan next week to do a demo how to investigate and reproduce locally error or on our test that can be useful for everyone.
Okay. It'd be interesting to know or find a list of all the weird gotchas for the turducken deployment with regards to like CNI and
yes.
core DNS issues.
Yes, we found two strange issue. One related to Weave, and we are following up with issue in the Weave repo, even if they ask us to reproduce, and it is not easy to do it, but we will follow up. And another is for a conformance test on the aggregated API that is failing, but we are not. We have to investigate it a little bit. So, okay. I will next week. I will give we will give a picture also of this.
Sounds good. Next step is also you. It's about the certs renewal.
Yes, so I started digging into the open issues that we have for security, and the first topic that I tackled is cert renewal, and I found a situation where what was in place was not consistent, and I started to try to figure out how to fix it. And the first issue is already, the first PR is already out, but I want to discuss this with all the people in this call, because so as initial approach, I'm taking I'm following what was in place for the ATCD certs, and I'm extending to the other certs. So what was in place is that every upgrade we do renew certificates, no matter if they are in near expiration or not. I don't know, it is not sophisticated, but it is easy to understand pro and cons. So I want to discuss if everyone agree that we renew certificates, and we renew certificates without any further condition or not.
So what are some downsides from if we were to not renew, or what is the negative consequences of renewing?
I don't think that there are consequences, because how it is implemented now is that before upgrading a static port manifest, we renew the certificate used by this component, and then the component restarts. So certificates are managed by, if the certificates are managed by kubeadm, I don't see problem in renewing them.
Yes, I also think the same. We got some votes in the Cluster Lifecycle Slack channel. We got some votes +1s on this, And also I asked Jason and Duffy, and they are also +1. But Duffy left some comments that we should investigate, like should we always renew based on the diff of the suns? And also, I forgot what else he said, but he has some recommendation.
If you want to, we can check the comment on the DPR. So
it does get a little bit weird if a person changes the configuration on upgrade. You're basically just regenerating. You're not really. Would you regenerate or would you renew?
During upgrade, we are not regenerating certs. So if you change the config, upgrade does not address your comment in the certificate. This is the current status. The renew basically does not look at the config, but it look at the certificates and preserve all the sun that are in the certificates.
But if a person changes the config and he changes the cert sans, don't you think that should be applied as part of the upgrade?
Again, pro and cons. So my personal opinion is that upgrade should be different from change the cluster, because upgrade is already too much complicated. But this is a good point. Probably we have to document how, if you want to change something before upgrade, you have to do this and that.
Okay, so long as we have a documentation that allows people the escape hatch, because a lot of times what people will do is they will batch changes to certain lifecycle events, and one of those lifecycle events would be an upgrade scenario, right?
Yeah, but this is unfortunately this is not consistent, because now when you do upgrade, if you change something that impacts the manifest, see, if you change something in the config that impact the manifest, you will see this applied. But if you change something that applies to the certificate, nothing will happen. This is how upgrade is implemented now.
What do folks think about that?
I think that ideally we should apply the config changes to the certs, but it should be definitely documented. And I definitely think that we should have a way to opt out of renewing the certs, like with a flag or something.
Yeah, I agree that we should allow to opt out, because there are cases when the user provides his certificates and don't want the kubeadmin manage it. And okay, so this is the first part. There is something to be noted, that certificates are upgraded when a component is upgraded. That means that if we are doing an upgrade and ATC is not upgraded, the version does not change, the certificates are not upgraded. The reasons why it is implemented in this way, I think that makes sense, in my opinion, because does not if you don't restart the component, it does not make sense to change certificate. So the new certificate won't be picked up.
In my opinion, so I can give you an example scenario. For instance, the etcd version in Kubernetes between multiple minor releases can decide to stay the same, for many cycles. And this means that the mechanic of using renewal for the other components is going to work, but not for etcd.
Exactly.
So if we have a way to force the renewal as well, that's our other option here, like force the renewal, or alternatively, like opt out completely.
if we look to the problem is that how much we want to change the upgrade workflow. Now the upgrade workflow, if the component have the same version, does not do nothing. And included the certificate renewal. Changing this will be something relevant. What I was thinking about was that we should provide a command that allows to check expiration of certificates and print at the end of upgrade, print something about please verify that your certificate, check your certificate expiration and so on. This was what I was thinking.
There's a general problem with status that where certificates is one piece of the puzzle, right? Like to verify status or state.
I mean, aren't there tools for that already? Like the official tools for creating certificates and stuff. Isn't there a way to verify the expiration from there?
No, there is nothing that gives you an information on. Please be aware that those certificates are expiring in 10 days or in 1 month. There is nothing that gives you information. There is only a set renew command.
Oh, go ahead, please.
There's a general problem, like a person wants to see the declare, like it's almost like spec and status problem where you want to get the status, but not just of the certs. The certs is one aspect of this, but there's multiple things that we might have declared in config where you want to see what was actually created or deployed and what the state of it is.
Okay, I got the point. I think that another option that I was thinking about is that in kubeadm upgrade plan to print also information about the certificate expiration.
So how are we going to determine if the certificate is expiring then?
You just check the expiring date. And you read the cert and you check the expiring date. It's not complicated. The problem is that the overall mechanic of certificate renewal that should be somehow defined.
I think that the problem is slightly different here. So we're basically having a single policy of like having a year's 1 year worth of certificates based on how KK is released, and we're actually trying to apply that policy to etcd, and this is not finely tuned to what etcd people are doing.
Well, it's kind of etcd's detail kind of fades in the background for this particular one. Like we should always just be updating and enforcing the renewal of it.
But I think
I don't think etcd is special here. Like it's just the certs for everything.
But, I'm working in Kubernetes since 2.5 years, and every measure Kubernetes etcd changed, or every 2 measures. So 1 year expiration is fine also for etcd.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't change the policy. I think the policy is fine. I think the internal workflow for what we do with upgrades does need refinement. I also think the being able to check the state is a problem because this is a common function of wanting to know when your certificates expire.
Because otherwise, I can try to implement something different that basically gives you information when you do kubeadm upgrade plan, what is expiring. And then during upgrade, forces the upgrade of the component if the version is changed and or the certificate are expiring.
I'd rather have it be part of the cert subcommand than the upgrade subcommand.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Other people? That's my opinion.
Are we talking about the check if the cert is expiring? Whether it should be part of...
yeah, what subcommand it should live under?
I honestly think that we should have some sort of a kubeadm certs, like top level command.
We do have the token, right? The token subcommand. Let me double check here. It's been so long.
No, I think that there are two problems. So we have a kubeadmin alpha cert.
Yes.
Subcommand. Okay, where there is a renew subcommand. But and what this command have to do is something that we have to discuss if the last point of the list. But what the problem, the first problem is what and how the certificate renewal should happen inside upgrades. If and how it should happen. Now it is happening in a strange way. ETCD certificate is upgraded in every upgrade. The API server certificate is upgraded only if expiring, and the other certificates are not upgraded at all. So
yeah,
now it is
generic. Yeah, I think now the generic update them all seems fine. I'm totally fine with the renew all the certs for a policy every time an upgrade applies. I don't see why you would not want to do that with the option to opt out.
Okay, let's go in this way. The only bit is that now it is driven by component, and etcd have a different life cycle that the API server or the other component. So this is something that we can leave it. I will document it very well.
Okay, so this is the other one is fairly interesting. How are we going to upgrade the kubeconfig certs? We should update the default paths, and the user is then responsible to copy if they want to other locations.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I think we can do this for now. Like upgrade everything, renew all the certs with the flag to skip. Possibly, when we go to upgrade phases, we can start thinking about like refactoring, you know, the whole process of how it should be done correctly. That's how I think.
Okay. And what about so we are not considering the expiration? We upgrade no matter of.
I mean, I think that was part of the Duffy's comment to consider the expiration.
Yes, it was his suggestion, but if since no one, I will chat with him if he sees problems in doing upgrade too frequently.
I don't think most people do not do upgrades too frequently. If anything, it's avoided.
No, I'm I agree with you. I'm talking about upgrading certificate every upgrade. So renewing certificate every upgrade. If he thinks that this is a problem or not, or
sure. I think getting more signals is always worthwhile.
Okay, thank you.
Ross, next up. Is there any other questions about certificate renewal? I still think I want to open up an issue to with regards to status because people want to know like how much time they have left, especially if they're out of band and they're doing their own cert renewal.
Are you talking about the command that gives you the expiration date?
Yes.
Okay. And sorry, there is another point. It is written, but we didn't talk about this. There are also certificates that are embedded in the kubeconfig file. I'm going to to renew
Go ahead.
those certificates as well.
Yeah, that's what Lubomir just said a second ago.
Ah, okay, but he was talking about the admin.conf, but we have also scheduler.conf, controllermanager.conf.
Yes, yes, all of them, I guess.
Yes, all of them except kubelet.
The kubelet is a sketchy one.
No, because there is the certificate rotation at kubelet level already active.
The client certificates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have that kubelet serving cert problem.
Yeah, I was talking with Nadir yesterday about that, and it's a long discussion about this. And also, we should probably discuss the CAS report. Basically, they claim that we have a bunch of security problems that I think that we can discuss in terms of like saying that, hey, this is not a problem. For instance, I don't think that this kubelet serving certs being self-signed is a problem. But this blocks, for instance, the metric server trying to scrape the kubelet as a server and things like that. So there's a long discussion there in terms of.
Why don't we have someone join the call and we can do a walkthrough?
Yeah, we also have a ticket for this already in kubeadm.
Are there other, now that people are actually digging into taking over Liz's stuff, are there other questions we currently have about the at least the renew portion of the certificates? We should move on. And once, twice, 3 times. All right, Ross, PR for HA cert key in B1 beta 1 config.
Yeah, this is actually very straightforward, and of course it's depending on the PR for beta 2.
Yep.
And like my only point here, like for discussion, is whether it should stay with a single option that's called certificate key in node registration options, or try a different UX approach in which we have a certificate encrypt key in init configuration, and then in joint control plane, which is a subfield of joint configuration, we have a certificate decrypt key. So this may be a little bit better for users.
Do we have like pros and cons between the two?
Probably like the only the only difference that I actually find between these two is basically from a UX standpoint. So the second one may be a little bit better for users to understand, but on the other hand, you basically have to put this key, which is basically the same key for encryption and decryption. You have to put it in 2 different places, while in node registration options, it's basically the same spot. It's basically symmetrical. You can actually see an example inside the PR description.
Fabrizio, what do you think?
Personally, when we designed V1 Alpha 1, we tried to put together all the information that were related to the joint control plane.
I don't actually think you can do node registration options because that's stored on cluster.
It's not actually. Only portions of it are stored on cluster, and basically, I think half of it is only stored on cluster.
Okay.
On a per field basis, it's not stored as a node registration options. It's basically, for example, the CRI socket is stored in the node annotations, and yeah, and taints too. And
I personally prefer having it in the joint control plane. For the joint part, for the init configuration, I don't remember if we have something similar.
no, it will have to be like directly inside in the init configuration there.
This is where like software engineers versus like UX of users might diverge. I would get feedback from, I think, two primary stakeholders. One would be Duffy and the other would be Josh. Josh has been through this gauntlet a number of times and created a good blog post on the HA stuff. I might actually reach out to those two and see what their thoughts are. I think from a software perspective, I think the init and join makes sense, but when you're specifying the same key multiple times in a configuration file, it's just weird, right? From a user perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see super user opinion.
The next item is a duplicate.
In the ideal world, if we had like customize in place and we had this template override mechanism, which was a lot cleaner, then I think we could probably like not care, do whatever we want to do. Then the template would autofill on running with kubeadm. Right. Oh, this is the wildcard sands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should. I asked for a user story, and I don't know if he gave one.
He gave one, yes. So as a brief background, this PR enables wildcards in certificate sans, such as that we now support like wildcards for the subdomain part specifically. You cannot support wildcards for the whole, like every domain out there. The question is like, do we even want to do the subdomain part? Is it, are there security risks? I think the same CIS people are going to tell us that we are probably breaking security again if we enable wildcards. So I think this change needs security evaluation before we merge it.
All right, let's wait for Jordan's feedback. We merge joint configuration validation bug fix.
Oh yeah, so this is a small one sent by a Chinese contributor. We basically there's a bug in our validation in the joint configuration related to discovery, and we basically say that there's a failure while there's no failure, and the PR is already merged. My question here was, do we want to backport this? It's not blocking in any way, just a weird error.
If it's not blocking and you don't get multiple reports from, how many reports have you gotten from this?
One.
For a couple of released versions of it, but it's a little bit different. It's more like the error message is wrong. So the error message is saying a different key.
Oh. I don't care if you want to.
-1 from me.
Typically, we don't do this. Like it has to be like a regression to do backports. So if we follow a policy where like we only backport regressive behaviors, and then we just keep moving the train forwards.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards +1. I'm 50-50, but leaning towards the +1 because I don't want misleading error messages, because they again are going to report this at some point and I have to triage the bug again. That's my only motivation, I guess.
I don't have strong opinions, so I'll say a 0 from me.
I don't have a strong opinion either.
Okay, let's do it, but only for one. We go back to
114 basically.
114. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So that's done.
This is like a semi-presentation. Does anybody have anything else? I wanted to talk about the Windows stuff for a while.
I think the only other thing we were going to do at the end was just walk the backlog for any new issues and do some triage.
All right.
Do you want to share screen and walk through this a little, Mir?
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm playing catch up.
Okay. So this document started some weeks ago. Basically, I discussed with people like Michael and Patrick Lang from SIG Windows. I dumped basically some ideas of like where we have problems, where we need to work on fixing stuff in kubeadm, and also in general, like what should we do with the situation on Windows nodes, because it's kind of complicated. And you can read the first part, but I'm going to jump right to the cap, which is at the bottom. So there's a draft. It's created by a Microsoft contributor, and I like copy-edited the whole thing heavily to basically comply with what is a cap, as much as I know. And basically, the important points here, like Windows was added as Windows containers were added as supported in GA supported in 114, but there's no tool for like the consumer to deploy it on Windows. The deploy Kubernetes on Windows. So basically, the SIG Windows folks want kubeadm as the official tool for that. But we have some technical limitations, and basically the proposal of the cap here is to get this in some sort of an alpha state in 1.15. And from there, we are going to see how this can progress in the future. The summary motivation are clear. So some goals and non-goals here is that basically we want to create a script. The script is going to be used for a couple of purposes: to download the artifacts for Windows that are pre-built. This includes kubeproxy, kubectl, the kubelet, kubeadm. And also the script is going to be some sort of a wrapper around kubeadm. So you basically download and execute the script. The script is going to download the artifacts, and then is going to start the kubeadm join command wrapped with some special care that I'm going to explain. So the goals is to support kubeadm join and kubeadm reset, but some of the non-goals is to install the container runtime, support control plane nodes on Windows, and joining control plane nodes as well. Also, something Patrick and I discussed today is to not support upgrades for now.
Can you pause for a second here? Like,
okay.
So the control plane nodes are still going to be Linux based?
Yes, the way they are currently with the Windows GA support, they are Linux only.
Okay. So we're only going to do kubeadm. That's just a weird statement. I think no one intuitively recognizes that Windows GA support means that you have Linux control plane nodes.
I tend to agree. The containers themselves, I mean, this is a complicated topic, but we just the idea of this cap is to support kubeadm/Windows worker nodes, and that's it.
Okay, I think, do we specify that underneath the?
It's outlined here, I think.
I would put it as a goal for the time being. Are we ever going to support control? Are the Windows folks going to create control plane nodes on Windows? Or yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a goal. It's a long-term goal, but it's worked on the kernel level. Later, I'm going to explain why what's the problem there. But you basically wanted to make it more clear that this is only for workers, correct?
Yeah, just to make it really explicit.
All right, I'm going to add a sentence here later. A couple of important caveats are we cannot run containers that require root privileges on Windows. So this pretty much drops these couple of important daemon sets, kubeproxy and CNI, that's Flannel. Flannel, by the way, is the one that we can use because Windows does not support anything else from the public space. I think they support something on Azure, but we are not going to use that. So basically, we have to use Flannel, and that's the only proposal in this kip. So basically, the problem there is that there's some weird space between the Windows kernel and Docker where you simply cannot run a privileged container. And this means that we have to limit kubeproxy to not deploy on the worker nodes at all. And that was my first PR that I sent that we put on hold. We basically have to merge that, otherwise the whole kip doesn't work.
If I may comment, the thing that I'm not sure I agree with is the idea of the script and the idea of putting into our scope a whole set of a bunch of things that are around kubeadmin, the script, the service installed on Windows, and whatever. Because if I look at Linux, kubeadmin does not install the kubelet service. It is part of the packaging, and I would like to, and while kubeadmin arrives, it has some prerequisite and only create a few artifacts. And I would like to have something similar also on Windows.
So who's the owner? I mean, can you scroll back up to the top again? Is this going to be owned by SIG Windows?
Yes.
So if they own the script, does that change anything, Fabrizio?
If they own the script, yes. If they want to change kubeadmin for doing something that is out of the scope that we have on Linux, it means something. So if they, we should set the boundary. For us, kubeadmin should be something that does one thing hopefully well, that is to create some artifacts, but it should not care about everything else. Just check that what it needs is in place.
Yeah, basically, as someone who is co-writing this kip, I understand the scope of kubeadm, and one of my main goals with this implementation is to not be intrusive in terms of how we use kubeadm on Linux already. So it's not the responsibility of kubeadm to install, a kubeproxy Windows service instead of a daemon set. We only support daemon sets. So that is the purpose of the wrapper script, so that we can move this workaround / alternative logic outside of kubeadm. We are not going to add it in kubeadm because it seems alpha to me, and basically we have to have it in the script for now. That's my thinking here.
I see scripts a little bit clunky, so I think that we should not go the script way. We should probably have kubeproxy and some CNI deployed prior to actually invoking kubeadm join. So basically, we should simply have a join check that kubeproxy is basically running as a Windows service. So my understanding is that the kubeproxy and the funnel need to be running prior to actually doing anything on our side.
It's the other way around. We have to bootstrap the worker node first, and then it's going to remain in non-ready state, and we have to then start the let me check the funnel service, and then we have to start the kubeproxy service, and then the node is going to become ready after it, the connections start happening. This is according to the Microsoft developers that have already tested it, minus kubeadm, of course.
Yeah, so basically, we should probably check that we have kubeproxy and funnel services that are simply stopped, and basically turn them on in the correct order after we initialize and bootstrap the kubelet.
Yeah, this becomes a question like, should we have pre-fight checks for this? My initial response is no, because this logic has to go away eventually, and in kubeadm, if we add it in kubeadm, but we can also have the checks from the script, the wrapper script, because the Windows with the command on Windows, you can check if a service is registered and if it's started. This is the initial proposal. Basically, the script maintains and checks the availability of the kubeproxy and funnel services.
Yeah, just
know. And what happens if a user runs kubeadmin without the script?
They are not supported. Like we should tell them you have to use the script, because otherwise you enter a custom zone that we cannot support, and that's the main reason.
We'll have to document the heck out of this, because if it's for Windows, it would be a whole separate page. Probably.
Yeah. So they have an existing page that is pretty detailed with all these caveats. And somebody from Microsoft is already signed up to write the docs once we have an implementation ready. But it's not, the docs are not going to be in our docs. We can link to them, like, hey, we have alpha support, but all the docs are going to reside in basically in the Windows docs of kubeadm, of Kubernetes. And yeah, should I proceed with the example user story here?
Yes, please.
So user wants to join a machine. They have to download the binaries using a script. After executing the script, we register kubeproxy. I don't think this is correct. We only register the kubelet here. Kubeproxy, Flannel can be registered. We haven't decided yet how and when we should register everything, because everything has to be a service, and Windows services are kind of odd. Basically, the way you do on Linux, the way you do them on Revolt, there's a similar procedure, but I have to basically, the cap is not complete in this regard. I have to first do some testing. But anyway, the idea is to register the services first and then perform the kubeadm join. We have to evaluate what pre-flight checks are going to run, and if basically our existing checks are like abstracted in a good way for Windows. We then basically kubeadm already supports restarting and managing the kubelet service from for Windows that was implemented in a PR some 2017, and we basically have to check if this works. If it works, basically we have to bootstrap this node, and the node is going to remain in non-ready. The same script then starts Flannel. We have to talk about like registering the services. Where is the correct point for that? Now here there is a moment we basically once kubeadm bootstraps this node to the Linux control plane node, we may have to fetch some configuration using the bootstrap client, but I don't think this bootstrap client has enough privileges to fetch like the kubeproxy config map. Does anybody know?
No, he can retrieve all the component config.
So then we may have to write some stuff to disk because, because we don't have a kubeproxy daemon set, we now are managing the kubeproxy configuration manually. So we have to fetch the kubeproxy config from the cluster, write it to disk, modify it to comply with Windows, and then start the kubeproxy as a service based on this configuration. And I think the same applies to the Flannel case. Like the Flannel on the Linux node has to be fetched, written to disk, and this has to be managed by kubeadm.
They cannot access the config maps?
How can you access the config maps from disk using kubeadm?
No, they will run in Kubernetes as a Kubernetes component.
Yeah.
And every Kubernetes component can mount a config map. Or they will run as a Windows service, so outside, fully outside Kubernetes.
Yeah, I mean, I tried this myself, and I don't have enough access with all the certs and configs that are on the worker node.
No, sorry, Lubomir. My question is, kubeproxy will run as a Windows service, so not managed by Kubernetes, not as a pod.
Yes, exactly. It's managed as basically a systemd on Windows, however.
Okay. Okay, so you have to provide, you cannot use the config map. I got it.
Yeah.
I'm not actually quite sure that you need that config map, simply because it's way too different. It was created from like a Linux machine, and it will have a bunch of like IP tables stuff embedded inside it, and not the Windows proxy stuff. So I'm not sure if that will actually be feasible to use at all, or simply go along with totally different config map.
So this is going to get super weird as we start to get component config matured, like beyond super weird. Because if you have your component configuration for your proxy specified, as a on cluster configuration, and you want to be able to do a reconf, there's going to be some weird discrepancies because it's not even running as a pod, and it can't mount the config, and the config's different.
Yeah. So for kubeproxy, I'm not exactly sure, but for Flannel, I know that we have to download something from the Flannel config map. And my question here is, do we have access to the Flannel config map using the Bootstrap token client, or?
The answer is no, because the CNI provider is not managed by kubeadmin.
Yeah, it has its own service account, right?
It should be managed by the script, not by kubeadmin.
Yeah, but we don't have access from the script at all. So basically, this leaves us with a manual step that the users have to manually edit.
No, you can. The script can create the. Basically, before starting creating nodes, you have to create a final config maps in the cluster and give access to the Bootstrap token. Then when you do join, the scripts can read the config map.
But how can I create a config map before? You mean you have to do it on the control plane node first, right?
Because if I follow your explanation, you are saying that you want to store in the cluster some configuration, one for Flan and one for kubeproxy, that are specific for Windows nodes. And then when you join a node, you want to use those configuration.
No. We want to download the existing configurations.
Yes. But okay, in cluster, what we have? We have a kube proxy configuration which was designed for Linux, as Ross was explaining, and we don't have nothing for Flannel because kubeadm int on Linux machine is agnostic from the CNI provider and should remain agnostic.
Yeah,
this could be part of the script wrapping, right? Like if it could do a separate whatever level post join grabbing of the configuration. So it'd be like a multi-part process. First part join is dumb. Second part join is like a kubectl something. kubectl get something from somewhere that has the appropriate ACLs.
Yeah, the problem is that we don't have access to the config maps. We don't have enough privilege to download the Flannel config map. The Flannel config map Fabrizio exists already because it's created by the Flannel plugin when you apply it.
Okay. So you are assuming that someone initialized the cluster and installed Flannel on the control plane node. Okay.
Yes.
The same people should give grant to the bootstrap token to this Flannel config map.
I see. So a step is required on the control plane node in any case. Yeah, the alternative was to. I see. Okay, that's a problem. But then again, if we have to have manual steps on the control plane node, the users might as well just copy the admin conf to the worker somehow, and yeah, this is going to allow the kubectl there to fetch anything.
The problem is that enabling giving access to the Flannel config map is out of scope of kubeadm.
Yes, the problem. We need to basically, when I get to this implementation, I'm going to see if this blocks the proposal completely in terms of UX, because the UX is already pretty bad, and I'm going to have to speak again with the Microsoft folks about the Flannel stuff. Okay.
There is an alternative that they put the Flannel config map into the public namespace, like we do for the cluster info config map.
By modifying the funnel manifests, we might be able to do this. But then it becomes a question like, is it hard-coded? I mean, okay, this needs some testing. Yeah, I understand.
Why does Flannel need to be running as a service? I can understand why the proxy would, right? But why does Flannel need to be running as a Windows service?
To my understanding, it also requires a privileged container.
Maybe install the CNI something stuff.
Well, the CNI stuff, it depends on kernel modules. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not sure. I don't have all the details about, but this is what the people are telling me. We need to basically not run daemon sets for the CNI and kubeproxy. But I mean, this is the proposal. We can talk more about in the PR, I guess. We have only 5 minutes. So briefly speaking here, the kubelet is going to be managed from kubeadm as start and stop. This is basically, these are implementation details. We have to abstract systemd away from kubeadm because currently we are quite bound to it, and that's not going to work on Windows. CRI socket detection we talked about with Ross, and It's kind of different to what we support. We need to remove C group drivers. There's a requirement to basically modify pod infra container images.
So before we keep going here, because this is like a lot of refactoring work with to make it all clean, right? The scope of kubeadm integration with Windows is pretty finite, right? If we're only working, at least at this point, with the, and I'm sure it'll diverge more over time. Does it make sense to abstract the details for Windows and Linux for this behavior, or does it make more sense to have like a kubeadm-w and just like have them implement their own and just mimic the behavior? Like if you just mimic the behavior you care about, and you specifically don't even include all the other flags, you don't include all this other options that exist, and it's a very turnkey, similar feel, but it's managed independently. What are your thoughts on that, Lubomir?
I was thinking about something similar. We create a new command that is Windows specific, and we basically abstract, take only the details we care about from the current Linux implementation, and that also work on Windows. But the problem is that the kubelet currently is like, it's so bound to systemd that there's no way to avoid these particular bits, and these about the flags, the kubelet flags. So either way, we have to apply this refactor. My original idea was to avoid the separate command and try to see what works and instruct the users like, hey, you shouldn't be using these flags because they don't work on Windows. But that was my initial proposal. We might want to go this way, but eventually in the long run, we might for the eventual beta support or something like that, we might consider the command that completely moves Windows support away from the Linux support. That was my idea.
I think that this is basically an internal fork, and it will be like nightmare to manage. What I'm thinking more is like we're doing all of this mumbo jumbo in order to like overcome the disability of Windows to support containers that require root. Are they actually thinking of adding such support so that we don't need to like abstract away kubeproxy and stuff like that? So the only things we'll have to do in that case is basically abstract away systemd and get the like forward slashes to backslashes.
Yeah. So this we have to do anyway. This is just bad. The kubelet, the way we write the kubelet flags. In terms of kubeproxy, you know, and flannel and stuff like that not being supported, that's a big problem. It's in the Linux, in the Windows kernel. So I don't think this is going to happen in the next year. And but we also, the only change we need to make with regards to CNI and proxy is that PR that I sent already. I think it's here. No, actually, the PR that modifies the basically where the kubeproxy deploys as a daemon set with the node selector. That's the only PR we have to merge, and we already have the same for the DNS deployment, by the way. Currently, core DNS does not deploy on Windows nodes. I'm going to ping you guys on the same PR. I think it's here, actually.
Yeah, the problem is that if they don't, like, if they have like to implement this for like a year, we'll probably have to have the same time. So basically, by the time we actually do this, they may have root containers.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but we're at time and the cluster API meeting is getting ready to start.
Sure.
Yeah, why don't we go to the doc and maybe we should table this and talk again next week on this topic, but there's a bunch of concerns on this issue. So
Just wanted to say that the deadline is like this week because next week is the 30th for features. So please comment now, and we have to submit some sort of a cap. That's all. Thank you.
okay, sounds good.